With the Nintendo Switch being out for over 7 years, there are bound to be some games that released and have been removed from the eShop. So in this video, I wanted to take a look at some of the games that have been delisted, and some of them have some really stupid reasons. And heck, I even own a couple. So from server issues to crypto mining, let's take a look. First, the most memorable delisted game comes directly from Nintendo itself. Of course, Super Mario 3D All-Stars. This game was announced on September 3rd, 2020 as part of the 35th anniversary of the original Super Mario Bros. You may remember the disclaimer stating the game would only be available until March 31st, 2021, which was extremely odd as Nintendo has never done this before, that we know of. Nintendo of America President Doug Bowser states the limited time availability was planned as a unique and different way to celebrate the occasion. But in reality, this was most likely an experiment to see if people would actually buy into their fear of missing out. And the plan was successful, with the game selling over 9 million units in total, which makes it the 22nd best-selling Switch game. And yeah, the game was fine, but the limited sales window didn't make much sense. Apparently, they did release one batch of games after the closing date, but that could have just been remaining stock or a factory error. You can still easily get this physical if you look at used game stores or Facebook Marketplace. I've only recently started seeing the price go up. But that's not the only game Nintendo yanked out from under us. They did the same thing with Super Mario Bros. 35, a battle royale where you play with 34 other players competing while you play the original Super Mario Bros. This was another anniversary celebration that was extremely unique. This never got a physical release either, so it's lost to time. Nintendo loves when we punch air, trust me. And they also like when we get fit. Unfortunately, they must not like this as much as I thought, because the Nintendo published game Fitness Boxing was delisted in November 2023, and nobody really knows why. It's speculated that the game's music had some expiring licenses, which is why it needed to be pulled from the eShop, but don't worry. Physical copies still roam the streets if you look hard enough. Oh, and also, they released a sequel, so why even bother with the first one? Nintendo isn't done yet, because they also delisted the game Fire Emblem, Shadow Dragon, and The Blade of Light. This was removed from the Nintendo Switch eShop on March 31st, 2021, similar to the 35th anniversary to Super Mario Bros. This would also have a limited time availability and a special physical edition which was designed to celebrate the Fire Emblem series. The delisting date was announced shortly after the game's reveal in December 2020, marking the 30th anniversary of the original Famicom NES release. But for some reason, the physical edition includes only a download code, not a physical copy of the game. Why would the game not be physical, especially with all of the other cool collector's edition things they have with it? I guess Nintendo didn't want to pay the cost of a cartridge with only 4 megabytes of data on it. Fair enough. And Nintendo has reassured owners can still re-download the game and that download codes remain redeemable for the foreseeable future. But let's move on to third-party games. There are still Nintendo published titles, but let's look at some others. And this list only gets more and more crazy. Remember the Crayola game? Crayola Scoot? This was released back in October 2018 and had a very Splatoon-y vibe, except instead of squids, you're kids with scooters. That sounds like so much fun. But not for long, because less than 3 weeks before the game was removed from sale on Steam, they announced it was getting delisted for consoles on December 30th, 2022. And there's no confirmed reason why. Most speculate the licensing deal with the Crayola brand expired, which just seems odd. Why would you create an entire game for it just to delist itself within 5 years? Seems like kind of a waste to me. I'm guessing it was some sort of backroom shenanigans, or maybe they didn't want to keep the servers live if there are even more servers in that game, because whatever. Next, Grotopia, a Ubisoft published game that has a pretty decent sized following to this day. This is another really odd delisting, especially because it was only on the eShop for a single year. July 2019, this released on all consoles with fairly regular updates, but in April, the Grotopia team announced the console versions would get shut down to allocate all resources to the mobile and PC versions. They simply said it wasn't sustainable. Next is Friday the 13th, another game that met an early demise by getting delisted in December 2023. Though the servers remain active until December 2024, the game was initially released for Switch in 2019. During the game's run, it got stuck in a legal fight between the original screenwriter and the director of Friday the 13th, Victor Miller and Sean Cunningham. Even though the game got updates and patches at first, publisher Gun Media and developer Elphonic announced on June 11th, 2018 that they would stop all future content development. This game was technically dead before it even got on the Switch. This was never intended to happen and wasn't something the developers even saw coming. What about that time all of our favorite anime lads were in the same game? Well, Bandai Namco announced that Jump Force would be delisted from digital stores on February 7th, 2022, with the server shutting down on August 24th of the same year. Some people speculated that the game was taken down because of the licenses between numerous properties featured in the game, because in the credits, instead of crediting individual owners, they only included Jump 50th Anniversary. And yes, most likely there were long-term licensing issues, but let's be real here. If anyone remembers Jump Force, it did not fare well with the average consumer, as we can easily see with the score of 56 on Metacritic. And I remember having this game, but now I don't. So what does that tell you? I will say I did like the concept, even though I'm not an anime chad. But speaking of anime chads, there was also a Dragon Ball game that was sliced from the platform. Well, kind of. The Dragon Ball Xenoverse 2 demo was removed on the Switch version, but is still available on other platforms. For some reason. That's all. Next game is one I didn't even realize was delisted, and it surprised me, especially since I thought it had a lot of potential. Knockout City is essentially ultimate dodgeball and allows players to run around a city throwing stuff at one another. This game initially released in May 2021, but less than 2 years later, in February 2023, the game director said, creating such a different game with no points of comparison and running live services for the first time in many of our careers has also made the past couple years particularly challenging. Since we are a small indie studio, it's simply impossible for us to make those kind of systemic changes in the live game while continuing to support it. It was ultimately delisted on February 28th, 2023, with the servers being shut down that summer. But if you still love the game, you can play the private hosted server edition on PC, which includes a lot of the content. This was ultimately the cheapest way to keep the studio running while having fans be able to play this game. But let's be real here, there probably isn't that many left. Who knows? I don't know. I think I did play it once. But what about the tragic tale of Minecraft on Nintendo Switch? Minecraft Nintendo Switch Edition was first available in May 2017. This is now considered a legacy console edition. But obviously this delisting isn't due to licensing or server issues. It's simply because they wanted to make the game cross-platform and had a whole microtransaction minecoin system that we're all used to this day. This defunct Nintendo Switch Edition didn't have any of these features and didn't include any major servers to play on. It was just simply Minecraft. This would ultimately result in the loss of the ability to port all Wii U worlds to the new Nintendo Switch version. However, they would eventually allow you to move the Nintendo Switch Edition worlds to the newly released Minecraft Bedrock Edition. That took place in June 2018, the same day the other version was delisted. But that wasn't the only Minecraft game that was delisted on Switch, as Minecraft Story Mode was also cut from the eShop for a really weird reason. While the game had a wide variety of flaws, which you can learn about in my video where I played every Minecraft on Nintendo Switch, this wasn't why it was taken down. The main reason for delisting ultimately came from the studio that created these games, Telltale, shutting down. And it was pointed out to me that Telltale is still around in some aspects, but their initial shutdown resulted in difficulties renewing the Minecraft license. This game also had multiple seasons, and it was noticed when they announced the eventual delisting that players should download all the content as soon as possible, as you wouldn't be able to re-download them after the servers are down. But thankfully, you can still play the first season of the game with a physical copy, like me, because I bought one for over $150. Which reminds me, thank you to all channel members. And if you want to support me, I would appreciate that. Click the join button, link in the description. Come here. You can also get your name at the end of the video and other fun perks. Sounds good to me. Anyways, this game was ultimately delisted in May 2019. We've heard about expiring licenses, but what about an upset franchise granting the license to another company instead? Which is what seemed to have happened with Monster Jam Crush It, when the Monster Jam people pulled the license from Game Mill and gave it to THQ. And this happened pretty fast, as the game was only available for around 1 year on Switch. I had my eye on it back in 2022 when I wanted to play it for my 24 worst Switch games video, but I couldn't find a cheap copy anywhere. Oh yeah, did I mention that the game scored like trash? As we can see from the Metacritic score being only 36. Yikes. But I think NBA Playgrounds has to be one of the most complicated delistings yet. Originally, the game was released alongside other platforms in May of 2017 and was published by the company Mad Dog Games. But months after launch, online play, free content updates, and paid DLC were missing from the Nintendo Switch version, as apparently Nintendo's patch and update limitations were difficult for the development team at Saber Interactive. So after the long delay in updates for the Nintendo Switch version, the developers posted on their Facebook page that they had a radical solution. They would release an entirely new version of the game built just for the Switch with all the missing content included, called NBA Playgrounds Enhanced Edition. The Enhanced Edition would replace the original game entirely. Only those who bought the original before the Enhanced Edition launch could still access it. And this wasn't the last time the game would be overwritten. In 2018, it was announced that 2K Sports would be taking over as publisher for the Enhanced Edition and an upcoming sequel titled NBA 2K Playgrounds 2, which, when released, completely replaced both of the previous versions. Speaking of games that got replaced, OverWatch was essentially swapped with Overwatch 2, as the team wanted to make it a free-to-play game. They made the transition very easy, with content being brought over to the new release. Even to this day, if you put a physical cartridge in the Switch, it'll boot up as Overwatch 2 after a mandatory update. Technically, Overwatch was delisted in June 2022, and I even did a video on it. Let's not forget about Pokemon Cafe Mix. This game was first released on the Nintendo Switch in June 2020, but was replaced with a new and improved version of the game and retitled as Pokemon Cafe Remix. this. Since there's no physical version and the update is mandatory to launch the game, it's impossible to play in its pre-remixed state. Pac-Man 99 was a Nintendo Switch exclusive, which was free to play for those with a Nintendo Switch Online subscription. This was first released in April 2021 and was eventually removed on October 2023, as it seemed like most lobbies weren't getting filled and the game fizzled out. And of course, there's that speculation that licensing may have had something to do with this too, but more realistically, it was the low player base. Taiko no Tatsujin Drum and Fun, one of the most iconic rhythm games. First released here in North America in November 2018 and was delisted November 2023. The reason this game was delisted isn't clear, but this is most likely Bandai Namco trying to shift players to the newest entry on Switch, Rhythm Festival, which includes more songs, includes online functionality, and continuous new content. Though if you want this game, it's still available physically, but the DLC is unavailable to download. If you've been around the channel for a while, you might know I have quite a history with this next game. When I first noticed this was delisted, I was not surprised in the least. The Popeye game on Nintendo Switch. First released in November 2021 and somehow made it 2 years on the eShop until June 2023. If you can't tell by looking at the gameplay footage, this game was absolute garbage. I even deemed it as the worst game on my top 24 worst Nintendo Switch games list. The delisting article says it was removed due to the expired licensing of the Popeye IP, but let's be honest, this was most likely pulled due to the embarrassment from both the developers and the IP holders. Technically, this game never got delisted, but it was never available on the eShop in the first place. That's Skylanders Imaginators, which was available on day one of the Nintendo Switch system. At first, this didn't really make sense as to why it was not made available digitally, especially since you don't need a physical portal for the Nintendo Switch version. Heck, they've even released digital versions of Skylanders in the past on other consoles and called it the Portal Owners Pack. In reality, I think Activision really wanted to push the sale of the toys. Plus, it would be confusing to buy the digital version just to boot it up and find out you needed to zip over to Walmart to buy a figure just to play it. Plus, if you were in the store buying a physical copy to begin with, you may be more likely to go home with more than just the base pack. I miss Skylanders, and I also bought this. Rip my wallet. Now, this last game is by far the craziest delisting on the Nintendo Switch, and was the fastest game to be pulled from the eShop for insane reasons. Cooking Mama Cookstar. There was very little information about this game before launch. It was originally advertised on the eShop showing only a release date, but that's pretty much all fans knew about it. The game was published on Nintendo Switch on March 26th, 2020, and was only live on the eShop for a few hours until it was eventually pulled off mysteriously. But some stores still received and sold the games physically. It was unclear why the game was removed, and some fan speculation made its way around the internet which stated the game was crashing, overheating the system, and rapidly draining the battery life. Some fans saw this and assumed there was a crypto mining code running in the background because of an early press statement that said the game would include some sort of blockchain technology. All was silent until April 6th when Screen Rant got information from a developer with First Playable Productions who shed some light on the delisting. They said it was a decision made by the IP holder Office Create. They talked about how the Office Create team didn't like how the game looked and felt, and that the game should be delayed or canceled altogether. But that didn't matter as the publisher Planet Entertainment went ahead and released the game anyway, which forced Office Create to terminate their license and contact Nintendo directly to immediately pull it off the eShop and stop printing physical cartridges. They even halted the publication of any sort of promotional ads made for YouTube, websites, and even TikTok. And they then went on to disprove the blockchain and crypto concerns, saying the statement about cryptocurrency was all buzzwords. The head of Planet Entertainment knows very little about these things. He just put some fancy language to get potential investors who like that stuff. As for the crashes and overheating, that would be because the game is made in Unity. By many people working on their first game, it's not the best product, but it made it through several vigorous reviews by Nintendo and Sony. There is no way crypto mining stuff could get through those tests. I doubt anyone at 1P would even be able to make such a thing. The statement also said that they weren't even sure that the game would get released properly, but the game would eventually be re-released physically on Switch as well as an unauthorized PS4 version through another publisher, Ravenscourt, and the IP holder Office Create would be taking the previous publisher Planet Entertainment to court over profits from the unauthorized sales, stating that Planet and Mr. Grossman were not authorized to release the Cooking Mama Cookstar Switch and PS4 games in 2020 and 2021 respectively, that the license agreement had been validly terminated, and the unlicensed Cooking Mama Cookstar products infringed Office Create's trademarks. They ultimately won the lawsuit in October of 2022, with Planet Entertainment being ordered to pay more than $20.9 million to Office Create in addition to legal fees. Funnily enough, after the lawsuit, the publishers decided to release another very similar cooking game with the same developer titled Yum Yum Cookstar, and you can buy that both physically and on the eShop, at least for now. I find it funny that in the description they advertise it as a brand new cooking game experience from the creators of Cooking Mama Cookstar. You'd think they'd want to distance themselves from that. Is there some delisted games that you like that I missed? Thank you to delistedgames.com for giving me all this information. And if you want to see my thoughts on some of these delisted games, check out one of these videos. Thank you to all channel members. Please consider liking and subscribing. I'll see you in the next one. See you later.